All right. So you told me a story once, Tati, that stayed in my head because I don't know. You're a good storyteller. It's very visual, but it's this idea of boardrooms and corporate strategy and data sets and oh, we're going to look at the numbers on a week to week and a month to month basis. And this idea of as large language models in particular are starting to become a lot more available and more useful in the enterprise and intelligent applications, et cetera, we're starting to see a really exciting natural shift from, let's call it, application centric architecture to data centric architecture, which means basically that all your data is more effectively talking to all your other data. And, developer kits like LangChain enable non-technical people to then interface with their data in a way where they might learn something about a data set that they never even knew existed because, frankly, they were looking at, God forbid, bad data before and they didn't even realize it. And so one of the things I was wondering if maybe you can shed some light on is this relationship between domain expertise and humans and the way they can work and collaborate with AI-enabled solutions, and that kind of back and forth, that I think is a little bit abstract for some people to understand and realize that AI is not like a tool and a technology and that's, in and out and you're done, but it's more like a colleague, right? That like works with you and you both kind of learn from each other. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll let you take it from there.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting because we've been talking about, and that's been a big jargon on, data centric decisions or data driven decision making in
Yeah.
corporations, when in truth it was application centric, because it was that self-contained jar of data that, only works in that silo. The data sets don't talk to each other, and the outcome is as good as the input. The output is only as good as the input, and you're having and there's really no uh, uh, there are no processes in place, and in most organizations the resources do not allow for you to have three people checking a set of data. And it's also, by the way, not a great use of resources to have people doing this and have so over time, in addition to the changes in the model not happening fast enough and technology not delivering on the promises they made in so many ways to these businesses, you strip down the resources because they were supposed to be filled by the technology. So then you really have there's a very big retailer that a few months ago announced that they had a $300 million hole in their budget because of a error on a spreadsheet
Yeah.
that was manual, and that went on for I think 3 or 4 years before they realized. And it was an honest mistake, right? It wasn't someone trying to do this on purpose. But you have so many flavors and so many versions of that. Whereas when you're looking at the large language models and you're looking at, specifically speaking about LangChain, it's truly data centric, because what it does is it brings down all these walls and is not just complete. It's not just putting a bunch of data together in a big ballroom. It's accurate because it understands human language and interacts with you. And where I see, for example, one very specific application for me is the ability to look. Let's say I have a hypothesis, which I always do, about what will solve this and what is the data that I need. That can interact with me to ask me the right questions and question some of these assumptions and this hypothesis for me to realize, well, yeah, this is the right. Maybe I need to change my hypothesis a little bit. Maybe I need to adapt some of these questions that I'm asking or some of the data that I'm bringing into this, because it's asking me, is making me think about, and is helping me develop the right measurement as well. It's also going to help me catch things that don't make sense in there, right? Because that's what machines are really good at. They're really good at looking at all of that. And one of the ways I talk about it when I'm speaking to people, because at times it's hard to see that coming to life in an operational or, let's say, a retail environment, but we're all familiar now with the examples that we have in the medical field and how AI is helping with that, diagnosis alone. And they've had, millions of cases in the past, but you still need a doctor. in order to make the diagnosis, in order to look, because the doctors who has that gut feeling has the experience, it has, so it's a two-way relationship in which the machine is feeding you with much more accurate, much richer, much smarter data, and on the other hand, you're feeding back the input, and you're directing, so you're also making sure that it doesn't deviate, that it stays the course, that it doesn't, when it's picking up biases, when it's picking up different, when you have a data set that's heavy on one side versus another, that it doesn't understand that to be the only truth. And all of those things will happen with that relationship. And when we say this relationship is two ways, it doesn't mean it's just two, it's you and machine, it's you, is the team, is the support that you get, is the right partners into that equation that are advising you on how to move forward with that. So, and speaking about the data, that's one of the biggest problems that we got to solve out there. And so I think one of the things that makes most executives and most retailers absolutely terrified out there is the lack of understanding on the quality and the accuracy of their data, and on the depth of their data, and how it's, so there's a lot, and there's a lot of data, right? You're mentioning the story, and I always tell this story about arriving at one of my prior, starting one of my prior executive roles, and somebody coming in with a stack of reports this big, and showing it to me and saying, hey, these are all of our operational reports that we would like for you to see. This is everything we measure. And I start going through it, and I realize, and I start asking a lot of questions about it. And for the vast majority of those measurements, they had no real insight tied to the measurement. They were only measuring. Or they were, if they had a bit of insight, they really didn't know what to do and how to go about making changes to that. But the worst portion is that we didn't even know what we needed to change. Does it need, okay, so this is down 10 points or 10%. Let's pick on something. This KPI is down, 10%. We need to bring it back. Why? Is it aligned with your current objectives? Is it aligned with your operation? Why do you need to, does it make any difference? How does it impact the other? So machines can also help you figure it out in a very precise way, what those correlations really are, the causation of things, or sometimes it's just the fact that some things may just be working in parallel. It doesn't matter that much. You shouldn't put your valuable dollars towards a certain KPI this is down. But it doesn't matter. And vice versa, right? Maybe you need to double down somewhere else where you do. And that's another, there's something else that's coming out very strongly in all of these surveys and all of these studies, is that the leaders that are getting ahead are quite ambitious in how they're looking at the results, which means that they're investing twice as much. This was on the BCG report. They're investing twice as much in technology, in people, and in AI.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right? Like, if you're able to process a previously unimaginable amount of data that already was available to you, and you're therefore able to surface a much stronger, higher quality, insight set, you can then make better decisions, and therefore you as a human being can then focus on the higher impact human activities, because the machine over there is just, it's got a photographic memory. It doesn't require 8 hours of sleep. It just goes and goes and goes. And I think that's why, you and I always, geek out on this stuff, because it brings together, the human bit, the culture bit, the technology bit, but the data stuff is just fascinating,
It's beyond the impact of what that alone, without all the actions that will come from it, without these correct actions. Another thing that I find incredibly exciting about technology, and specifically about the possibilities of working with LangChain to solve, is around helping me figure out the solutions that will work with my current status, will meet
Yes.
me where I am.
Yep.
Because again, when you're, and that's where that disconnect between, by the way, IT and operations and everyone else, or leadership, or that becomes so apparent, because you have, as an operator, you have to present a certain a certain results based, results driven approach, and a certain picture to your CEO and your executive leadership team. You have another picture you're presenting to your colleagues, and you have a picture of what's really happening in your area. And you have, there are 3 roles that are open. There are 2 roles that are now frozen you can't hire for. There's a person in your team that's operating at 50% what they should be for whatever reason. You have these real life scenarios that I have never worked in an operation where that hasn't been the case, which is another place where a lot between proof of concept and tools and initiatives fall flat in their face, is that they're built for optimum conditions.
Yeah.
They're built for perfect conditions, with the right labor, with the right investment, with everybody performing at 100% what they're supposed to be, with clients responding a certain way, with it. So all of those things are built. Whereas what I find really exciting about these models is the ability to adapt. So, you know what? Yes, we're going to do this, but guess what? I don't have the ability to put the resources here. How would be, so that model is helping me figure it out. How would I then deploy something that would still impact positively, bottom line, top line, and everything in between, with what I got right now, with what I have?
Yeah. Meeting you where you are, right? And I think that the commitment that LangChain, as an example, has to design, right, and abstracting away a lot of the complexities so that, increasingly less technical folks are able to interface with these, high horsepower tools is amazing. So we'll leave it there. I think the audience is, as always, going to love understanding the perspective, but as always, appreciate the time.
Thank you, and send us questions. We love questions.
For sure. See ya.